Hello everyone and welcome back. I want to talk about Tzeentch today, more specifically Egrimm Van Horstmann, because I have decided to reread his book in order to give me a little bit of confidence to build up that god-awful mini from 5th edition. I need a Chaos Dragon for a tournament next year, and unfortunately we really don't have any Chaos Dragon minis just right now. Who knows if we'll ever get one. Chaos wildly gets ignored a lot in fantasy, so I guess it's going to be the same thing in Old World. But since I've been rereading the book, I've been kind of thinking about how Egrimm can be implemented in Warhammer 3. We do know that Creative Assembly have outright spoken about him. There's currently no plans, as they've stated, but it's something that I imagine is only a matter of time. Tzeentch, at the time of recording this video, only has 2 Legendary Lords. It's pretty disappointing because the faction is fairly fun. Now, if Egrimm comes in, and I think it's more of a when rather than if, he needs to be quite unique. I don't imagine that they'll go with another completely different style as the Changeling, but I also don't imagine that they'll copy-paste what they've done for our good friend Kairos. So we're going to jump in, we're going to talk about how I see that this could happen. Obviously, Creative Assembly might have a different method or different idea, but I'm hoping it's not too long until we have another Tzeentchian Lord, maybe in about 23 years' time, you know, as Creative Assembly's current release cadence is. But yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so before we jump into like possible mechanics and stuff, we have to talk about a possible start position where I think it's going to be somewhere in either Norsca or in the Northern Chaos Wastes. There's not really a lot of place to put him, and yes, he would be a very close to the Changeling, but the Changeling can teleport. You never know in the future, maybe you'll be able to pick your starting theatre. Egrimm does head out in the Northern Chaos Waste, so there is a spot there that works perfectly, which is right next to Daniel, where I know some people might say, well, that's too close, but keep in mind that Epidemius is right there too, so it's getting to the point that congestion is going to be an issue. I wouldn't mind Norsca, but we're going to have to wait and see what happens with Norsca in regards to Tides of Torment, but I think realistically the Northern Chaos Waste works perfectly. I could also see him starting in like the Realms of Chaos if that gets implemented into the Mortal Empires. There's a lot of people talking about how much they want that. I'm still kind of on the fence about that. I still think that the Northern Chaos Waste should be expanded dramatically, but we're going to have to wait and see whatever Creative Assembly's plans are there. I could also see Tzeentchian Mortal Lords and Heroes, the Spellcaster variant, having access to the Lore of Light specifically just for this faction. This wasn't a thing in the tabletop, but it would make sense. Egrimm would have access to it, and I could imagine him teaching his Cabal how to use the Lore of Light. The idea here is using your enemy's weapon against you. I think something like that would work out quite well. It also just adds a little bit of difference between the factions. Don't worry, this isn't the mechanic that I'm talking about. This is just like an addition, which I think would be kind of fun and flavorful for the faction. I don't imagine that Creative Assembly would see fault in that, and I could see Games Workshop even agreeing with that too. We have seen certain factions in the tabletop using magic where really it's not attached to them. But let's talk about a mechanic. I could see a unique cult system being introduced to make Egrimm quite unique in an effort to make all Tzeentchian factions have their own cult system. Obviously, we've got the standard one with Kairos, and then this like hidey hole with the Changeling. So here I would see it more in a similar style to Elspeth von Draken. I know that sounds weird, but hear me out, right? The idea of these cults would be the Purple Hand, where you're actively benefiting from it, but also benefiting the other factions there. You're trying to not rouse too much suspicion. The idea here is the Purple Hand is going to be not only influencing the Empire, but other human nations too, and it should spread that way. So you can have cults in Kislev, in Bretonnia, in Grand Cathay, all the rest, as long as it's human-controlled lands. The aim of the game here would be to allow you to build up your influence over all other human nations throughout the Cult of the Purple Hand and just the Cabal in general. You can still go down to the Empire and take it over if you so wish, and you can have those cults playing around in those cities too. In a very similar way to how the Delve system works to the Dwarfs, the idea here again is just something very, very different. You're trying to take over, but you're also keeping the influence and the manipulations going. Think of of it a little bit like Seduction, where you would want to keep them in line, and you'd want to see those factions build up, because the more that they survive, the more benefits that you get, which would then allow you to conquer the Northern Chaos Wastes and other parts of the world without too much of a problem. Again, completely optional, which I think is probably the best way to go about it, so you can ignore this and just play it like a normal Tzeentchian faction, or you could even do like build up the cults in the Empire whilst you're busy launching the invasion of Grand Cathay. So you're still getting the bonuses from the Empire whilst you're busy trying to take over Grand Cathay, or vice versa. It really depends on where you want to go. And then finally, a bar on the top, very similar to like Epidemius, where you'll get more and more bonuses to your faction leader depending on how many cults you own. So if you have like 4, you'll get some extra technology speed, which is always very useful. The Tzeentchian one is quite large. You could also get some extra magic for your faction-wide bonuses, and also some cooldown reductions to Egrimm. Get to around 10 cults, and now Egrimm has access to the Law of Light special Cataclysm spell. Get to 20 cults, and now all your generic lords will have access to it. Because the more Tzeentchian cults being active and doing their own thing, the more the winds of magic will favor Tzeentch, so you can start getting your spellcasters with the Law of Light, the Law of Metal, and the Law of Tzeentch, getting access to Cataclysm spells. Now, I know that all sounds weird without visual representation, so on screen right now is an example of how a campaign would work, with the darker blue being you expanding physically, you know, taking over settlements, fighting factions, just the usual total war experience. And the lighter blue on the campaign map, mostly around the Empire, has been focusing on you building up your new cults, building up the cult of the Purple Hand. This means that you're getting your influence on 2 different parts of the map at the same time, getting faction bonuses, getting stronger. I think this could work out quite well. The problem that Kairos has right now, other than the fact, right, like Kairos is very, very fun, but he is still kind of vanilla-ish, right? Then we've got the Changeling, which is kind of boring after the first time that you've done it. There's no really incentive to do it again. So we need another faction that kind of takes the influence from both and molds it into one, then being inspired by the greater amount of content that we do have in this game. It's a large, large title with loads of things that could be made into something as a unique experience for Tzeentch. The cults could also have a teleport building, so you could be able to teleport your character like Elspeth does, so you could launch invasions. That means that you don't have to have cults only in the Empire. You could put them up in Grand Cathay to start your invasion, or in the Empire just to kind of start it there, the Southern Border Princes, wherever you want, where there's more of a human concentration. I think something that would actually end up being really, really good, because it'll allow you to plan out some more aggressive parts. We've already got teleporters with the other factions, obviously, because some cults will allow it, but it will allow you to kind of build up a little bit further. The Elspeth teleport system is a bit better, because it will allow you to kind of defend your own territories too. However, those cults that have the benefits will only be around the areas of human nations. But now we have to talk about the big question. Will Egrimm be like a free legendary lord or a DLC? I know some people are going to say, well, he should be free because, you know, Shadows of Change didn't have an FLC legendary lord. We had an FLC hero system with that. And I think it's also the fact that the budget from Shadows of Change went into like the massive Kislev rework, the Kairos rework, and so on. Everything just already was used up. I think he could work as an FLC, but I also do think that Creative Assembly might be leaning towards a DLC, which is why we haven't seen him yet. So hear me out here. We do know now that Creative Assembly want to do smaller DLCs, right? This is like Neferata and stuff like that. And I kind of like the idea of that. Because while Tzeentch is really decent in terms of roster, like it really is pretty damn good, we do have to look at the fact that certain things are being made now which weren't units in the past. And it's something that I could see coming in for Tzeentch just to kind of finish them up. So the example here is we're getting end times units, right? We have end times units for Khorne with the form of the Skull Reapers and Wrathmongers. We're likely going to get the Putrid Blight Kings in the future for another Nurgle DLC, which, I mean, just kind of makes sense. And it looks like Creative Assembly have made a end times unit, or well, Games Workshop approved it or created it, and then Creative Assembly just did their thing with the Champions of Sinesh. As of right now, we don't have a end times unit for Tzeentch. The end times were so rushed that basically most of the factions got ignored and got screwed over. So I could see a mutated Demonkin unit like the Wrathmongers, Champions of Sinesh, and the Putrid Blight Kings, but for Tzeentch. Something very, very different, a spellcaster, mortal, almost no longer mortal unit. Alongside that, there are a few things that can be done, but there's not really a lot. And I don't know exactly what scope and scale a small DLC could have. Until the Neferata one comes out, we won't really know if it's going to be just, oh, you know, look at the Thrones of Decay DLC and it just splits it up into 3 individual DLCs. So it's just Neferata coming out with the same amount of content that Tamokan had, but it's just by itself, rather than being released at the same time as 2 other factions. So in the hypothetical that does become the case, what can be done to make sure that it's worth the money? It's going to be quite a tough one. Like, I've got this here on the screen right now with an idea on how that could be a DLC for Tzeentch, but due to the lack of units that are actually available, maybe at this point it could benefit some other factions. So the legendary lord is Egrimm Van Horstmann for Tzeentch, obviously. A legendary hero could come in, you know, one of the ones from the Storm of Chaos. The bird guy was kind of cool. The idea there is just another legendary hero. Tzeentch does have a few of them already, but I feel like if you're going to do a DLC, you're going to need a legendary hero just to kind of justify it a little bit more. And obviously usable by the Warriors of Chaos, and I would even say usable by the Norscan faction, depending on what happens with a Norsca rework, if we're going to see a lot more influence of Chaos, or if they're just going to still be their own thing, or Chaos Light, or whatever, right? But Sylar is usable, so I could imagine this being kind of used. We'll see, right? Then, I could imagine no generic Lord option, but I could imagine a Zangor Shaman hero, so usable with the Beastmen also. It's just a Shaman with the Lore of Tzeentch, but you'd be able to have it with the Disc of Tzeentch. This depends on what is going to happen with the end time stuff, and if Creative Assembly are going to add in more like Chaos divided stuff for the Beastmen, which I think some people do want. I want that personally. I'm saying no Lord option because, well, really everything's being covered, and I don't think a Beastman like Tzeentch Lord would work, right? I feel like that should just be done for like possible legendary characters and stuff. So yeah, no Lord option, but yes, a hero. And it links up to how the Beastmen are right now, because obviously Tzeentch does have access to some Beastmen units, so it's kind of going full circle. I mean, nobody really wanted the Sentinels of Tzeentch, but there we go. As for units, well, this is where things get a little bit more interesting, because I feel like some could be dedicated to just Tzeentch, and then what we could have is a bunch of unit variants introduced to give it to all the Chaos factions, and that's it, well, barring the Beastmen. So, here's where we'd get like a End Times unit for Tzeentch, which would be like a very heavy front-facing unit, but also have access to some spells and bound spells or whatever. You know, the idea here is an End Times version of what we expect a Tzeentch unit to be with some heavy mutations. Get the Fireworm in, that's something that a lot of people have been asking for. It's just a giant Chaos Spawn, but I feel like more Chaos Spawn units would be great. Just introducing as many of the Chaos Spawn as there can be possible. I mean, we do have the... It's not really a Chaos Spawn anymore, but it is a Chaos Spawn. It's the new Khorne unit. The Blood Beasts were originally a Chaos Spawn, and now they're just their own thing. I could totally see that happening again. Now, that's basically everything else missing for Tzeentch. Like, I don't see anything else coming in. So at the point here, I'd say Chaos Cultists. Cultist warriors, cultist fanatics type of stuff, you know, like flagellants. The idea here is a bunch of cultist units, harkening back to Mordheim and stuff, which, you know, is part of the Warhammer Fantasy IP. So give them to the other factions too, maybe just have like different reskinned versions. So kind of like what Champions of Chaos did. There wouldn't be a lot of work needed there because they'd be using the same animation rigs, just different skins. Undivided cultists, Tzeentchian cultists, Nashi cultists, Nurgle, and obviously Khorne. And the idea here is like you could use them with the Warriors of Chaos also. So you have some very, very cheap chaff. And they could just be there to kind of flesh out everyone. It could be cool to see the monogod rosters being fleshed out with a little bit more cultists too. We have the cultist hero, and I just feel like this would just finalize the monogods, right? Barring the fact that, yes, there's some missing units for Nurgle, but that's something that we could see in a Nurgle DLC in the future. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I just really wanted to talk about Egrimm. After actually filming this video and just doing everything, I felt like I'm confident enough with that with that model. For those of you not aware, it's just full metal. It's a pain to glue. You have to pin it, and even then, the wings can be awful. There's just a lot of problems with it. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you all again very, very soon. And yeah, like I'm just preparing some videos in advance because I'm gearing up for the move soon. So hopefully everything goes according to plan. See you soon, guys. Have a great day.